Hi everyone. There was big news that happened 3 or 4 days ago now, because I've only just got around to do it because of the madness in the last week. But the OPCW have released their final report on the Douma attack that happened on the 7th of April 2018, and this is the report here. And look at the length of it. If you look right at the top right hand of my screen, you can see the bar. Look how long this report is, and we haven't even got 25% of the way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read all this for you now. No, I'm not. I'm just going to get back up to the little diagram here of the flats where this attack allegedly took place, because I'm going to come back to that later. Because I'm fully aware that since I last talked about the Douma attack, obviously there's been a lot of new subscribers, so they're probably not all of you are actually aware of everything that went on and everything that I've covered so far. But obviously the Douma attack happened last year, and we got word that there was a chemical attack that had happened in Douma, and it was Assad that did it, governor, and the French had the proof, remember? This came out with the Syria chemical attack. France's President Macron has proof. They said this was on the 12th of April, just what, 5 days after it happened, and he said he would decide in due course whether to respond with airstrikes because urine and blood samples from victims of the attack have tested positive for chlorine and a nerve agent. Media reports quote US officials as saying that's what they used as a pretext to go and bomb the country. This is what the United States actually put in a press release, and they said that yeah, it was a nerve agent. It wasn't. Specifically, they said it was sarin. And the OPCW interim report that came out last year actually said, no, that's not the case. So you would have thought that they would make a big deal about that because they've just bombed the country on a pretext of a nerve agent. That wasn't the case. But they didn't. They came out and said it was chlorine. Even though the report said, didn't say that it was chlorine, the report said, actually, we found some chlorine. We've just got to do some tests, and then we'll obviously do our report on it. So they jumped the gun on that. We caught the BBC jumping the gun on it, and they had to change one of their articles' headlines. And this is what they have said now that the report has come out, right? I have covered so many BBC articles on Douma now. I'm fed up of doing it, and to be honest, I'm sort of hoping that this is going to be the last one, weirdly, at the same time as I'm hoping that the truth comes out, because it's just... This is the first report, though, that the BBC have put out that if I was to really... I would have to really be picking at it to say that's false, that's wrong, that's misleading. You know, I would have to be really picking at it. And it's also the shortest I have seen them write on it. The last one was pages and pages and pages and pages. What really happened in Douma, they said. I'll go back and I'll disseminate it and see how much they got wrong back then one day. But this is what they say now that the report comes out. Obviously, the title gives it away. The OPCW report has said chlorine was used. Now, we'll get into exactly what it said and exactly what that means has happened after. But let me just read this article. I'm going to say, read it all. The Global Chemical Weapons Watchdog has concluded chlorine is likely to have been used in an attack on the Syrian town of Douma last April. That's a far cry from we have proof that nerve agents were used, isn't it? The Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, said data gave, quote, reasonable grounds that the use of a toxic chemical as a weapon took place, and that this toxic chemical contained reactive chlorine added, but didn't assign blame. Now, they can now assign blame, but I think they decided not to, because when they started this investigation, they couldn't. That was given them in between. So I think that's why they're saying, no, we're not going to assign blame here. And they're not saying that because they can't assign blame here. But, you know, you read into whether they can on the report or not. Well, medics said that more than 40 people died in the attack. Obviously, we got reports that there were over 70 at the time, so that was extremely exaggerated. And on the then rebel-held area, so The US, the UK and France accused the Syrian government forces who were besieging Douma of using chemical weapons on the 7th of April attack and carried out airstrikes in retaliation. The Syrian government has denied ever using chemical weapons. Its ally Russia has said that the attack was staged by rescue workers. They didn't say staged by rescue workers, they said staged by the White Helmets. They were quite specific on it, I remember. The first article I've seen that the BBC do on Syria where they specifically really did not want to put white helmets in the article is really, this is quite amazing. The OPCW's conclusions were based on environmental samples, witness interviews and other data gathered by members of a fact-finding mission that visited a number of sites in Douma 2 weeks after the attack. The watchdog also said it found no evidence of the use of nerve agents in Douma, as some initial reports suggested, nor any evidence to support the government's claim that a local facility was being used by rebel fighters to produce the chemical weapons. This is something that I didn't go into that at all. I didn't think that was possible. It was just dusty and dirty. And then it concludes, this article does, with, in June, the OPCW was given new powers to assign blame for chemical attacks. However, it was not the mandate of the fact-finding team sent to Douma to do so. I'm not sure whether that's right, BBC, but I'll give you a right. I think basically they were given the power afterwards, so they're not actually doing it this time, but you know, maybe they're right, who knows. But yeah, that's it. I think that's the first article I have seen the BBC ever write on Syria or to do with a chemical weapons attack that does not mention the white helmets, where they really should have put white helmets there, but now they didn't want anything associated to it. And of course, we know why, because I'll go into this in a second, but just to conclude, what I have reported in the past is that this video, I want to say this video, I mean this video, I can't show the video now. I've had a worldwide ban from showing it, apparently. I tried to upload a video and the ban has been, it's worldwide, so I can only show a still of this White Helmets video. I'm sure you remember it. What we saw in the video were children crying, children screaming. It was all over the BBC. Rescue workers putting water over their heads and obviously treating them for what they said were the effects of being exposed to nerve agents and chemical weapons, etc. Then when independent media got on the ground and proper journalists actually got on the ground and started interviewing people, oh, wait, this isn't what they're saying at all. And Robert Fisk, who is an award-winning overseas journalist of the year, I think 7 times or something like that, yeah, he concluded that it wasn't chemical weapons that these people were being treated for, or exposure to them. It was hypoxia. It was they were living in a dusty, if I've got a picture actually, I can show you. There it is. Let's just move this across to the other screen. So this is him in one of the tunnels, and obviously all the children were in the tunnels and it was being shelled and dust came up. Now these tunnels are all interconnected, obviously because of a lot of shelling. It's all over the city, you know. One of these tunnels actually went into the clinic from underground. They all entered the clinic from underground and started being treated for the effects of dust inhalation. That's when the rescue workers, these white helmets, came in, shouted gas, started pouring water on the kids. Obviously, people are panicking. Doctors start doing the same thing. That's when, this is what Robert Fisk reported. This was then backed up by the work of Pearson Sharp. He interviewed a lot of people. If I've got the, I haven't got the net. Actually, I will show this as well. This is Carla Ortiz, and because of work that she's reported on in the last year, we found that these white helmets actually, you know, when places like Aleppo have been liberated, she showed us in a video that the white helmets base was next door to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS, to Jais al-Islam, you know, to the terrorists. And the people on the ground in Syria are saying, no, they're not working for us like the Western governments. They're working for the terrorists. They only help the terrorists. Okay, So then you start digging deeper, and you find out that the white helmets are actually people who filmed this. They're actually were an organisation put together by James Le Mesurier, who was a former spy. He put them together in Turkey, called them, I think, the Syrian Civil Defence, when there is already a Syria Civil Defence. So it's just like changing one word. It's like me, I don't know, starting an organisation in Jordan called the Blue Crescent, training a load of people to work with terrorists, and and then ship it. You can see. Now, I'm not sure, to be honest, whether this was a construct that the British government did on purpose to work with the terrorists. I don't know that for sure. But what I do know is now that there is more than enough evidence that we have seen that casts extreme bad light on these actors. These are people that you shouldn't be trusting, and you certainly shouldn't be getting your prime source of propaganda information from, that leads to courses of three nations going and bombing a country. You see my point? I don't know whether this is an organisation that was started in good faith and just went bad or not, but it's certainly an organisation that cannot be trusted. I think it's fair to say that. And I think anybody who is now of an opinion that no, these are white knights, and I think they're deluded and they're not looking at facts. I'm trying to keep up with the timeline here. So where am I? So this is Charles Shoebridge now. He's an ex-army guy. He was high ranking in the army, and he's done some brilliant work over the last year, not just on Syria, as other people have that I will mention. He's done some great work on that and the Skripal poisonings, and he obviously examined this massive document that I've just given you an idea of how big it is. And basically he's just put some points down, and they're quite astute. These are: building damage consistent with cylinder impacts. Now this is what I want to keep on this screen here. So what they're saying is, you may remember we saw some photographs of people in gas masks, and I think I put the title of one of a card on one of my videos as this guy in a gas mask. But it looks like they were dropped out of a helicopter. Because as you can see here, there's three-dimensional drawings of the aperture, the size of the aperture in relation to the size of the cylinders, how the cylinder is going to be bent, the tested doing it there as well. It's extremely in-depth and forensic, this is, So I think to conclude anything other than cylinders were not dropped from a helicopter, I think would be silly. Now, what they conclude is that it was likely that this was the point of release of the chlorine gas, and it was likely that chlorine was used. And the reason, I think they can only conclude that it was likely is because there are so many other questions to answer here. For instance, chlorine traces were present. Cylinders may have been the source, he says there, but the images suggest instant death with no signs of trying to flee, which seems inconsistent with chlorine. And then if you factor that in, the gas release mechanism was never discussed. Okay, I don't know what he's pointing out there, I really don't. But images of foaming mouths were questioned. Hospital images including children who weren't ill. Witness testimony was inconsistent, and as he points out there, the report has much reliance on these white helmets, this shady organisation that we don't know whether there were good actors in it at all anymore. He goes on to say there were other minor inconsistencies and ambiguities, but the OPCW hasn't also assigned blame. Now, as I pointed out, that could be because when they started this, they didn't have that authority, and that's been given them in the interim period. I think that's fair, to be honest, if that's the case. But images suggest instant death. You can see here, and then images of foaming mouths questions, It's extremely possible. What I'm thinking, what Charles is saying here is, for those cylinders to be dropped and then nobody there, or very few people there, and the body's actually shipped in, and then you see my point. Because what I am concluding, and this is how I'm concluding basically the reporting of what I've been reporting on it for the last year, is this is what happened, most likely, but everything added on top of that was theatre in order to manufacture consent to bomb the crap out of Syria. I think it's plainly obvious if you actually look at the evidence. It goes on to note as well, Charles does here, it's very astute, notable that now more than 5 hours after the long-awaited OPCW report, the UK media still aren't mentioning it. So nothing in the BBC, nothing on CNN News, and you know, and then you look at the report that they eventually did put out. It's the shortest one there is. There's no mention of the white helmets at all. It's the first article I think that they've ever written on this that didn't include the white helmets or the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which obviously I've took apart. Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is a geezer in Coventry that had a £195,000 grant from the UK government. A geezer who, you know, was imprisoned, was found guilty of fraud 3 times in Syria and fled Syria because he was going to be in prison for a 4th. And he's very anti-Assad. They don't tell you any of this. They make Syrian Observatory for Human Rights sound as if, you know, it's some mighty, wonderful charity doing great work in Syria. I've got no doubt that the guy is probably doing his best, this guy in Coventry, but that's all he is, a guy in Coventry. He also goes on to point this, and this is what I really want to hammer home here, because he says an important point on Douma. The foam on mouth seen in victim images that appears inconsistent with body secretions, paragraph 8.98 of the report. This may suggest foam placed later, is what he's saying, perhaps to bolster the false nerve agent claims. Here's how the foam was reported at the time. Now, whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter what he's saying there. What matters is this, because this is the scum. You can tell it is because it's got that ridiculous headline. But this is what they said, remember. A vicious killer, deadly sarin gas used in Syria chemical attack leaves victims foaming at the mouth before suffering seizures. At least 70 people were killed in an alleged nerve gas attack on the rebel-held of Douma, Syria. This article is still up. The nerve gas that allegedly killed at least 70 people, including children in Syria, at least 70, leaves victims foaming at the mouth and suffering crippling seizures before they die. Harrowing footage showed gassed kids frothing at the mouth after tyrant Bashar al-Assad's jets dropped a deadly cocktail of chlorine and apparent sarin gas on the rebel-held town of Douma. All false. It's all false. There's no sarin. That was debunked by the OPCW 6 months ago. This article is still up. This article goes on to give details of how people die after being affected from sarin in the most gruesome way, and how they die in agony. You know, really laying it on thick, really trying to invoke emotion, doing their best to try and evoke emotion, which leads me to this. That's what the video is. They're looking for emotion. It's consent that they're trying to manufacture, and this is the theatre that goes on after the event. Now we know what the facts are. Okay, now we know what the theatre is. And we can see how this propaganda construct, this whole story, was just a result of either press malpractice or blatant propaganda. We know, okay? We know. Now, I'm not saying that the rebels in Douma were trained by you know, by Western people at all. You know, we don't know who they are, but we know that there were many that were trained and shipped in and weaponry given to them by ourselves, by our own governments. We know this. This is Operation Timber Sycamore that started in 2012 and 2013. This is its Wikipedia page. Yet this is something, again, the media never, ever, ever seem to mention. And when they do, it's paragraph 17, subsection B. They don't make a big deal about it. Why? Because people knew this. People would know what is going on. People would say, hold on a minute, we are training and funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda? I want to go back to this. This is basically what I think has happened here after a year of reporting. Yes, it looks like it was likely an attack. but everything else that happened on top of it. The media circus with surrounding this video, the BBC showing the little girl. You know, do you remember the video of the little girl I showed, say, you know, talking about the martyrs and the gas and etc., filmed by the white helmets, and never show the other side. Remember the 18 people who went to the OPCW in The Hague, the 18 people from Syria who were in that hospital to testify that no, what I have basically just told you, what Robert Fisk told us, that's what happened. Those 18 people were persecuted by the Western media, and what they called was an obscene masquerade. Do you remember? Do you remember how our media just attacked them relentlessly? Because all of a sudden, there was a different explanation to the shit that they'd been peddling for the last year. When Rhiannon Delati, the BBC reporter, about a month ago, wasn't it, something like that, came out and made his tweet saying that everything else around it is theatre. For me, it's just the mainstream catching up to us. I want to show you something. Here is a website called the Working Group on Syria Propaganda and Media, right? They do fantastic work, not just on Syria, but on other areas as well. And I pretty much follow everybody on this list who I can. And this is where I get a lot of my information with regards to Syria from. Just look at the names on this list, right? Obviously, there's Vanessa Beeley, who I hold in great regard as a great reporter, especially on matters of Syria. And then you've got Professor Emeritus Oliver Boyd Barrett. That's somebody I don't actually, I'd never heard of, but it's a professor. These are all people who work on this website, the Working Group on Syria Propaganda and Media, that I go back to and reference a lot in my work. Dr. Tara McCormack, Professor Paul McKeague, Professor David Miller, Professor Piers Robinson, Dr. Greg Simmons, Dr. Florian Zollman. These are all the members of this group on Syria Propaganda and Media. These are all highly educated, highly intelligent professionals. These are our peers. These are our, in Piers' case, literally our peers. But these are our peers. These are the most intelligent among us. These are the biggest critical thinkers among us. That's who we need to go to more to get our information, especially on anything historical, and not just make up our own bullshit in the media, which is what you get at the moment in the media. And this whole facade, this whole charade that went on last year, and it was a charade, you could see clearly what it was from my position, and I've seen it all along. And you know what? I think what this report has come out and basically done is backed up, I hope, everything I've said. I hope. I think at one stage I said it was obviously a false flag, and I still, you know what? There's no way to know who did that. You can easily say, oh, who was in the helicopter, you know? You don't honestly think that bad actors can get helicopters? Of course they can. You know, and there's so many questions there that we know what facts are facts, but everything else we have to fill in the gaps. That doesn't mean we should, with whatever bullshit fits our narrative enough to propaganda us into war. And remember, that's what it seemed like all this was. It was a way to get into war. It was a way to bomb Syria, just at the point where he's about to win that war against these proxies that are in there, that have been, many of which have been funded and armed and trained by, you know what, your tax dollars and our tax pounds. If you frame it like that, then people will get mad. And as far as I can tell, we have bombed, along with France and America, a country, remember, by the way, that had dismantling of its chemical weapons overseen, you know, doesn't have them. And all the targets that were bombed in that bombing, the reports have said, actually, no, the OPCW went there and checked, I think it was. They checked. Couldn't find any traces of them. So we just bombed a load of buildings for no reason whatsoever. But you know what? Hey, Raytheon did really good out of it, you know? Boeing did really good out of it, I seem to remember. Halliburton, you know, these people. Maybe not Halliburton, but you see my point. And it was all based on this. A video done by people. Recorded by people. The same people that these people have been screaming about, in one case Vanessa Beeley, for years. Is completely dodgy. I don't know what they were started out as, the white helmets, but I know that whatever it is bad now. And these are the people that have been giving you the truth on things like Syria and been giving you the truth on things like the Skripal poisonings. And is it any coincidence, therefore, that people like David Miller and Piers Robinson and Tim Hayward are the people that the Integrity Initiative are smearing and attacking and slandering? It doesn't take a genius to work out what is going on here. And if it's allowed to continue, and if the truth behind this theatre that I believe it was, this everything that happened, this likely chemical attack in Douma last year, if the truth behind that theatre never does come out, if Rhiannon Dalati doesn't have the proof, or that documentary on the BBC never airs, never sees the light of day and it's quashed, it's going to happen again and again and again and again. And how do I know that? Because it's happened again and again and again every single time in history when it comes to war for the last 80 years or whatever it is. It's outstanding. Gulf of Tonkin, First Gulf War, Second Gulf War. It's just over and over and over. I've missed out about 20 there, but obviously they're all based on lies. And now we've got more lies being perpetrated about Venezuela because they want to start another war in Venezuela. They want to overthrow another government. Now they're trying to get more weapons into the country to start another coup. And the media are not telling anybody about it. They're promoting theatre like this instead of examining it and trying to get to the facts. Because when you actually do get to the facts, all you're left with is that it was likely chlorine and we don't know who did it. That's the truth. Everything else is a propaganda theatre constructed around it in order to manufacture consent for war. They will try desperately for the truth to never come out about it. Because if it does, what do you think the people will start thinking about what's going on in Venezuela right now? All of a sudden, they're not that stupid and propagandized to think, hold on a minute, they could be lying about that one too. And as we know, they are. They're lying about that one now as well. This is why you have to support independent media. I've shown you article after article over the last year of mainstream media outlets, including the BBC, outright lying to its audience, and they're not retracting anything that they have said that's lies. Meanwhile, you've got my hero in America, Jimmy Dore, doing a live stream in which he's having a great time. He slightly misrepresents Joy Behar on a segment that he's doing about The View and Tulsi Gabbard, and then feels so guilty about it the next day he makes a video apologising for misrepresenting and correcting the record. Do you know why he does that? Obviously it's because he's great, but it's because we take it so serious in independent media that we get it right and we get the facts right. We're mortified when we get things wrong. Mortified. And the reason is because we're beholden to you. You're the people. You are the people. We're not beholden to the corporations. We're not beholden to the governments. You want the truth, that's what we give you. And that's the difference between us and the crap that you get at The Guardian and all the others. We've got to overthrow this media propaganda construct that has gripped, it's holding the glue of the establishment in place. We've got to smash it apart. I hope I'm not repeating myself too much, but I just think it's so important. There you go. I've hopefully covered the entirety of the Douma story now, and unless the media suddenly, change their mind and say, okay, we'll come out and actually tell everybody what the real truth was with regards to Douma, which is probably going to be something far closer to what I've just reported on you than they have in the past. Unless that happens, hopefully I will never have to report on another BBC bullshit article about an alleged chemical weapons attack happening in Syria, where we've gone in and bombed the country without having any evidence whatsoever and without waiting for the facts to come out. For more truly honest, independent media like the video you just saw, please subscribe and click the bell below as well so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. If you also like and share and comment on the video as well, that really helps with the algorithm and boosts exposure. And if you can support me, please do so. You can do with any of the avenues on the screen at the moment and below this video. You can support me for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, and every dollar helps. We need your support at the moment. We do not have an operating fourth estate. I'm sure you're aware, a functioning media holding power accountable is vital for democracy. At the moment, we haven't got it. So people like me are having to fill their shoes and do the job for them with your support. Thanks very much for your support. Till next time. Peace and take care.